I'm here today with the 2020 Hyundai Sonata Limited. This is painted in Calypso red with a tan on tan interior. The MSRP on this Sonata is $33,300. It's powered by a 1.6 liter turbo direct injection motor, making 180 horsepower and 195 pound-feet of torque. That's mated to an 8-speed automatic transmission. It gets 27 miles to the gallon in the city, 36 in the highway, and 31 miles to the gallon combined. I think this new Sonata looks great, it's priced very well for the segment, and overall this is a really nicely packaged sedan. So let's talk you through some of the features on this new Hyundai Sonata. This limited trim, I think, has a fantastic interior. This is such a nice place to be. I love the contrast between the black and the tan. And there's a minimalism here, a simplicity that I haven't seen in other Hyundais before. And I kind of like it. After using it for a few days, you don't get a tuning knob, you don't get as much control as you normally do with these buttons that aren't physical buttons. They're just kind of touch sensitive. But they do a really nice job once you get used to it, and everything here is very well laid out. You have your gear selectors here, your drive mode selector down here. You can even get into a camera view when you're in drive. And these are some of the nicest high-res displays for reverse and forward-facing cameras that I've seen. Really high-res, great frame rate, nice dynamic range. Pretty impressed with just the camera system on this car. And this touchscreen is pretty good too. It's pretty responsive. You get a nice Apple CarPlay display that's very wide, very high res. Going into apps like Waze is great just because you can see so much. Of course, you have a button for your heated steering wheel, heated and cooled seats, and I like how it's just one press to get to the lowest setting. Very often when I hit the heated seat button, it gives me too much all at once, and I'm constantly having to press it a few times to get it to the lowest setting that I prefer. It has a pretty attractive looking key fob. You can also do the park in, park out feature. Actually, maybe let's try that while we're here. I think a little bit of a gimmick, not something that you'd really want to use on your own, but it is kind of fun to show friends, I guess. There it goes. Oh, that's so weird. That is so weird. And it pretty much stops and starts when you press it. You have to hold it a little bit, but look at that. I wonder if I stand here, if it'll stop. It will. There you go, you heard it here first. The Sonata won't run you over. That's pretty cool. So does this mean I can get rolling B-roll of the Hyundai Sonata while I'm outside the car, ghost riding the whip? Alright, that's neat. I'm about it. So now that we're on the outside, some of the design features and the design cues on this car are really quite interesting. The more time I've spent with this car, the more I've kind of gone to appreciate it. But there's some really cool stuff here. So, first of all, this grille looks great. It's a really nice integration of the radar cruise system. Of course, you have cameras up there too. And these daytime running lights, these DRLs, the way it's integrated into the trim panel, I thought that was a really cool design feature when it first came out, and it's unique. And that's the thing with this design, is Hyundai's done a lot of unique things that I think they haven't done in the past. Even the wheel center caps are a little bit reminiscent of center lock wheels. Hyundai did a lot of work to make this look like a rear-driven sedan. And I don't think it really looks rear-driven like the Kia Stinger or anything like that, but it's an attractive design, and they did a really nice job putting it all together, and there's a lot of little elements that kind of make this car special, in my opinion. You even get these little vortices over the tail lights. One complaint that I have is there's no real way to pop the trunk that I've found from the back. And when the car's on, you kind of have to go in and pop it with this button. It's a pretty spacious trunk, decent amount of room back here. You get a spare tire, jack, tools, all that stuff. You can easily pull that lever to lower the seats. And of course, this taillight design, the way that swoops around, is pretty sharp. In the back seat, we have a decent amount of space back here. It's easy to get in and out of. Plenty of leg room. I have one USB port here, a couple of climate control vents, and that swooping design is even carried over here, integrated into the door handle. Even the door pulls are kind of neat how this is designed. It's very simple, but very cool and effective. It kind of adds a little bit more of a premium special feel to the overall nature of the Sonata. All the controls and weights to everything too have a kind of a consistent feel. That's something that I see in Lexus a lot, where all the buttons, all of your inputs feel very similar. They've even designed special turn signal stalks for this car. Oh, and then you also get the cameras that show you your blind spots. Those are pretty useful. Overall though, a great cabin, really nice space to be in. It has all the features you need, and everything is pretty easily accessible. And they've done a little bit of work here to make this look and feel a little bit more premium with eliminating some buttons and switches. And this is a good direction for Hyundai, because this definitely feels a little bit higher quality than Hyundais that I've driven in the past. Of course, you have this weird reverse tachometer here in the center display. That's kind of fun. I don't really have many complaints about this drivetrain. The 8-speed shifts nicely. This 1.6 turbo has a decent amount of power. However, with Hyundai just releasing the hybrid version of this car that gets 50 miles of the gallon all day long, I'm not sure I would swing for this 1.6 turbo. It is a nice powertrain though. It gets good gas mileage. It has a decent amount of power and speed. This 8-speed really does a nice job holding gears. It can sound a little bit harsh at high revs. It's not the best sounding motor, but let's put it into sport mode and see how that does with a 0 to 60. We'll turn traction control off for this. I will say these paddle shifters feel really nice. They have a good click action to them. They seem to get the transmission to shift relatively quickly. drive mode, you just hold the paddles. There are a few different drive modes in this. There's Smart, Normal, Sport, and Custom. Honestly, it's a Hyundai Sonata. It's not the end version yet that they're going to come out with. It's a pretty good car to drive in normal mode most of the time. Could probably throw it into Smart for some extra dynamic driving at full throttle, but really, that's all I'm going to be using this car in. You can even see kind of a sliding scale there when it'll put you into sport mode. That's kind of fun. I'll show you what mode it's going into. So while we're on this straight section, let's show you guys this cruise control and lane keep assist. This is one of the best systems I've used recently. It does a really good job keeping you centered in the lane, and it actually, as long as it doesn't need to make any steering corrections, it'll stay engaged for quite a while, and it'll only prompt you to put your hands on the wheel once it sees a turn. You can skip 5-mile-an-hour increments holding the cruise control button. It's a smooth system that works really well. It's very easy to engage and disengage with the press of a button. I like that. And you can even use the system without cruise control engaged. You can use it just while driving normally. Let's say you need to take your eyes off the road for a second, go in, select something on the screen. There you go. Look at that. It works great. It's even taking this turn. Most cars can't handle this turn. If you want to engage cruise control, that's easy too. Great system, great use of buttons and controls from Hyundai. I've been going for quite a while and it still hasn't prompted me to put my hands on the wheel. Sometimes it'll ask you a little bit early, sometimes it'll ask you a little bit late. It's a little bit inconsistent in the timing. Struggled a little bit there, but it got us pretty well centered. There's a lightness to everything in the Sonata. It doesn't feel super solid, super buttoned down. There's a little bit more of a lightness to the controls, the steering. It doesn't feel cheap, but it doesn't feel heavy. And as a result, there's a little bit of a nimbleness here. It doesn't have that solid feel that maybe a Toyota Camry would have, or maybe even the new Honda Accord. But that said, it's a very nice car to drive overall. There's a little bit of wind noise at speed that I've noticed, a little bit more than maybe some of the competition. But otherwise, that's really my only complaint from a driving standpoint. Even the stability control does a nice job staying out of the way. It's not super intrusive. Again, we're not in a sports car here. Let's see how the highway driving assist works at speed. So far so good. I haven't seen any glitches in the cruise control, in the radar guided cruise control. It comes to a complete stop nicely. You can resume by just pressing the accelerator. Definitely one of the better assisted systems out there. let's try out this Bose sound system. And first, I want to get into the sounds of nature. So if you don't listen to my videos with headphones on, just know that I record all these videos in binaural audio. And it gives you kind of a 3D sound experience when you're wearing headphones, because the microphones that I use are actually in my ears. And when you listen to audio source that's recorded from the same location, it kind of has a 3D effect with the way sound waves bounce around my head and the way we've learned how to spatially recognize distances of sound. So I feel like this Sounds of Nature is a perfect match for my binaural audio in these videos. It's a little bit of a gimmick, and I'm not really sure why it exists, but it's a fun feature nevertheless. The only situation that I could see that you would actually listen to this in your Hyundai Sonata would be as if you were taking a nap at a rest stop and you wanted to drown out the noises around you. This would actually work pretty well. I especially like the open air cafe. Okay, that's probably enough of that. Let's go back into Apple CarPlay. We'll listen to our sound test tracks. Bose system sounds great. It's nicely tuned. Good balance between all of the treble and bass and everything. It sounds pretty good. I have noticed a strange feature, and I mentioned this in the Elantra that I had a few weeks ago. If you press up on the steering wheel, it'll just repeat the track that just played and start from the beginning. But if you press down, it'll go to the next track, and that's the case throughout the audio system, whether you're in Spotify, whether you're playing tracks from your mobile device. Just something to be aware of. I do miss the tune knob a little bit. Your tracks are a really long reach over there. But once you get everything settled in and dialed in your infotainment, that doesn't become as big of an issue anymore. I have a pretty nice driving position too. These seats are quite comfortable. I will say for taller drivers, you may have a little bit less headroom than you want. If you're over 6'2" or so, this might be a little bit of a vertically challenged driving position. I will say for shorter drivers, you have plenty of adjustment. But of course, the best thing to do is just go in and sit in one of these cars and see how you fit in it. But I find that I wish this front driver's seat went down a little bit lower. Suspension tuning on this is great. Flat cornering, decent ride control. I mean, this is a sedan. It's going to ride better than a crossover. It's going to handle better than most smaller crossovers and SUVs. You're going to get great fuel economy because this is probably pretty aerodynamic. It actually has a decent amount of steering feel too. I can feel exactly what's happening on the front wheels. I'm really excited for the N version of this car. I I think if I were to get a Hyundai Sonata, I'd probably either get the hybrid or the N when that comes out. Those two extremes seem the most attractive. This is a really nice middle ground though, and this limited trim has a lot of great features and nice luxurious items. And I'm so glad that Hyundai is still using their 8-speed automatic transmission. It's a really good transmission. It shifts great. It's nice and smooth. It does exactly what you want it to do. And they haven't gone the direction of CVTs. Even their hybrid retains an automatic, which I think is pretty cool. I wish there were a little bit less wind noise, but really that's kind of my only complaint. Overall, this is such a nicely rounded sedan. It's very competitive in this segment. I would probably have this over a new Camry. I just drove the new Camry 4-cylinder all-wheel drive, and I do prefer that over the V6 TRD that I had a couple weeks ago. The 4-cylinder's tuned a lot better. However, the 1.6 in this is a lot quieter, a little bit less harsh than what's in the Camry. The Accord, though, I don't know if I'd have this over an Accord. The new Honda Accord is such a good car in every trim and every variant, from the hybrid to the base 1.6 to the 2-liter with a 10-speed auto. It's a really, really nicely rounded car. But so is this, and I think the Accord styling is pretty polarizing. I've actually gotten quite a few compliments from people this week just kind of asking what this is and that they haven't seen this new design on the road yet. And I will say, very often when I get into press cars, sometimes the more time I spend in them, the less I like them. Sometimes initially my first impressions are pretty spot on with how I feel about the car. But in this Sonata, the more I've driven it, the more time I've spent with it, the more I've started to appreciate its features, its design, its style, the way it drives. It's an easy car to live with very few shortcomings. And yeah, I think that'll wrap it up for this review. Thanks for watching, guys. Let me know if you have any questions. But be sure to stay tuned on the Winding Road Magazine channel. We'll also post a POV night drive and a day drive of the Sonata Limited. We'll see you guys in the next video. Take care.